All right, everyone. Now we have to talk about Mandani, of course. Yes, in New York, actually. The Democrats should have gone with Cuomo. And this is something that I say very, very reluctantly because I am no fan of Andrew Cuomo, although he seems to have regained some semblance of sanity over the last couple of years. Mandani, meanwhile, is a democratic socialist. Which means a communist, basically. It's basically a watered down term for a commie. That's what he is. The Democrats have decided to generally side with him. Schumer, Sanders, and AOC have all come out in support of him, and the primary is ongoing. We're going to see what happens with that. We're not 100% sure. As long as it remains a packed field, he probably wins. This is a terrible idea. Now, can he win the primary? Yes, of course. Can he win the general election? Yeah, I mean, he's the Democratic candidate, so, in New York City, who else are you going to vote for? He'll win. Um, but it's a terrible idea for the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party will effectively be erasing their federal platform in favor of, they're doing sort of what the GOP has done for decades. They'll be erasing their federal platform for a state level platform. For example, let's put the shoe on the other foot. Let's say that you have somebody who has been politically successful in Wyoming or someplace like that, someplace that is deeply red, so it's heavily Republican, and you try to extrapolate that to a federal platform. It does not work. The GOP has tried this multiple times, by the way. You look at Mitt Romney, for an example. There's a reason he's exited politics, let's just put it that way. The Democrats are now trying to do the same thing. The kind of platform that you get in New York City or San Francisco or Portland or someplace like that does not represent the average person in the United States. Certainly not in red states and also not in the swing states. It doesn't work. But they appear to be trying to create this weird platform. It's not even clear at this point that my prediction will even be correct. What I had said is that if the Democrats were smart, and they're not, but if they were, what they would do is they would get a dark horse candidate, like a Barack Obama style moment, and they would run them. Somebody without baggage, somebody who's relatively unknown, relatively young, preferably, and at least reasonably well spoken. That's what they would go with in the next election in 2028. What it appears to be is that instead they're going to go with possibly Gavin Newsom with a federal platform that is bootstrapped to Mandani, basically. They're talking about him incessantly for a reason. He could end up being running mate or something like that. This would be political suicide. They will not win with such a platform. It is not possible because it does not translate to a federal platform. There's a difference between state, local, and federal politics. Federal platform, you have to at least pretend to be reasonably moderate. You have to go along with what the public wants. On the state level, you have to, of course, go along with what the state wants. The state, though, is not the federal government. When you're representing a congressional district or something like that, like AOC or some Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, of course, when you're on the congressional level, you have to represent those constituents. In that capacity, it's perfectly fine. AOC represents her constituents. They like her ideas. Vermonters, generally speaking, approve of what Bernie Sanders is doing. My apologies to the nation, by the way, for this. But it doesn't translate to a federal platform. This is what these individuals do not understand. They appear to be completely oblivious to it, actually. It's rather astounding. I would assume that an army of people who have generally PhDs and so forth would be intelligent enough to understand that the fact that they can win in their congressional district doesn't mean that that same platform is going to work on a national stage. They appear not to understand this. It's very, it's, it strikes me with awe actually looking at this, honestly. I would assume that they would be intelligent enough to understand this. Political strategy is something that I know a relatively great deal about after years and years of analyzing politics. But these people, I mean, most of them have been in Congress longer than I've been alive, and they still don't appear to understand it at all. Pelosi doesn't understand it. Schumer's gone crazy. He's trying to assert himself. It's not going over so well because he's quite clearly a little cuck dog. Bernie Sanders, he's been crazy since the 1970s. Long before I was born, he was already insane. He had his honeymoon in the Soviet Union. Now we've got this Mandani fellow who's probably going to win the Dem primaries. And if you're the Democrat running for the New York mayoral race, you're probably going to win. There's like a 99% chance that you're going to be the victor. It would be very strange if the Republicans were capable of carrying out any sort of hit on Mondani, assuming that he is the primary winner. You're going to end up with a Democratic socialist who's going to be in the vein of AOC and Bernie Sanders and Elon Omar and people like that. And this has been a huge problem for the Democratic Party. It's been an enormous problem. They struggle to explain to the American people why they would be, giving bed and rest to a bunch of socialists. Because the average American in the swing states doesn't want this. Most of the Democrats in the swing states are union Dems. Well, Mondani doesn't appear to be a big fan of union Dem sort of action. He appears to be more on the Bernie Sanders left. That's going to be a little bit of a problem. You may end up literally hemorrhaging New York State. You might end up losing New York to the Republican Party. This is now a feasible opportunity for the GOP, and boy, oh boy, will they exploit it. They're going to run ad after ad after ad for years to come. They're going to do this because it can actually work. I never thought that I would see the day when the GOP would be even remotely competitive in New York or New Jersey. Now it seems like they might pick up both states. J.D. Vance is likely to be the candidate. He's a military veteran. He's well-spoken. He's relatively young. He's intelligent. He looks cool. Yeah, you couldn't really hit more marks, assuming that the Trump administration doesn't completely collapse and burn, and I don't have any reason to believe that'll happen, thankfully, because I want what's best for the nation. Assuming that doesn't happen, I have a feeling he's gonna knock it out of the park. He might win New York State. If that happens, the Democrats are going to be shattered for several decades. They're going to crash and burn so spectacularly that they might not actually recover. They might die as a political party. And I would rather that not happen because I would rather have a second party to actually vote for because I'm not a natural born Republican. But, you make your bed and you lay in it. That's basically what's happening with the Democrats. It's inexplicable. You're insane to vote for Mandani, honestly. It's a move of a literal insanity. Literal insanity. That's about all. Peace out.